Hey everybody, you're listening into Burst G-Back TMD from Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome to episode 13 of the Real-Time Web Series. This week, we have a very special guest with us in the studio. In my opinion, possibly one of the most wild style-oriented writers that I recall seeing when I first started doing graffiti in the early 2000s. We've got Du's DAF crew. Welcome.
What up, what up?
For the people tuning in for the first time, the Real-Time Web Series is an in-depth process video meets podcast. So I basically document the visual process and you ask the questions online, our artist answers all your questions, and we pretty much start from scratch building a knowledge base around graffiti in New Zealand. So kicking straight into the episode, we're going to start off with looking at Duz's background and kind of some stories that some of you guys have asked us. So firstly, when did you first start writing?
I first started doing toy tags, toy pieces in about 89 when NWA first dropped. Bismarcky, NWA, some friends of mine went to Auckland Grammar and
that's where I went to.
Yeah, there's a lot of writers come out of Auckland Grammar. He was just a good friend of mine. We used to rack pilot markers and tag in the stairwells in Newmarket. Yeah, that's basically where I started. Not really concentrating on pieces, didn't really know how to do pieces, or there was no pieces to look at, just straight letter tags.
And how did you come to select the name Duz?
I used to write my own name Dion, just change it up a little bit. So my tag really is Dion. Duz just came as I had to change it, basically.
Don't want to get busted for your real name.
Exactly. I got that from R&B.
Ah, okay, gotcha. And have you written any other names other than Duz?
I got a whole heap of just names that I scribble and shit like that, but nothing really. I've done a few pieces with different names, but nothing that I've really kept continuing on with. Okay.
What actually got you into painting?
The first movie I ever seen which had graffiti in it was Turk 182. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that movie. It's
how do you spell that? Sorry,
Turk Turk 182. It's an old movie. I think it's 1985 it came out. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's about I think he's from New York and his brother is a fireman, and he gets hurt on the job and they won't pay him out for it with the city, and
so he becomes a writer.
No, his brother does. His brother becomes a writer because he's, I can't actually remember the full story of it, but anyway, he's hitting subways and doing all sorts of stuff in it.
Okay.
My parents actually got it out for me and my brother when we were kids. Yeah. Okay, also, Wizards, if you haven't seen that movie, Ralph Bakshi, I'm not quite sure how you pronounced it, but that's very heavily influenced on me, especially because the Knock 187 car, the Star Wars, it's got the dragon from that movie. If you haven't seen that, check that out. It's up there with Vaughn Bode, basically, in my opinion.
So you're saying you first started tagging in 1989, is that correct?
Yes, so I wouldn't say I was all city or nothing, but that's when it caught my attention. My friend was like, yeah, look at this, I racked these markers and blah, blah, blah.
There's a couple of people that I've interviewed that have talked about they watch, something like Star Wars being quite important. Was that the same?
Definitely, but I didn't see that until probably in 1995, maybe. I didn't know, I didn't know it existed. Subway art, actually, a friend of mine stole it from the school library, and I stole it from him. But that night, basically, we went out and did a piece. Wow. Got some paint, got chased.
At that time, were you part of any crews, or were you just kind of going solo, or were you just going out with that one friend?
I did a few pieces, real toy pieces, using VHT, basically whatever we could find. I was living in Northcote at the time. Actually, the pieces stayed up for years. They were under a bridge joining the motorways. Didn't really do much like proper piecing until 94.
So can you tell me a little bit about DAF Crew and BH? And
I wasn't there for the start of it. R&B, Mock, Bliss, which is Aaron's sister, they started it in apparently 1992, were doing tags with it, but didn't actually form it until 1993 and actually did proper pieces. Most of them had careers in Australia, Melbourne. Aaron and his sister from Melbourne. Senna, who used to live over here, DMA, he lived here as well in the mid-90s. Also another amazing artist.
And how important was it actually being a part of a crew?
For me, it meant everything at that time. It was like getting put into bloody, I don't know.
Sports team.
Yeah, the All Blacks. I made it.
Could you tell me a little bit about what it actually meant to be a part of the crew? What did you kind of get up to?
Yeah, it just gave me the fire to do burners, basically. But not only also that, it gave me the knowledge of how to go about doing a piece, how to draw your outline, what caps to use, what paint to use at that time. Because back then, obviously, there was no internet, no real way of finding out of how to go about doing it properly. Not a lot of people, bar from Opto and DLT, really knew how to paint properly, how to go about it.
I guess moving on to, moving back to painting, what is one of your craziest missions that you've ever done?
Probably the first time me and the boys went to Wellington was Tank, Roski from Australia, Payne AC from Australia, Upset, WL from Australia, myself, and basically did the mission down to Wellington, painting trains.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
What made it so crazy or amazing?
Just the freedom of, because obviously no one was really doing it at that time, so you could just walk into the yard.
Early 90s or late 90s?
I think it was 1990, early 96. It was the first time we went down there. We had the gas burner, the box of beers, knives were on, basically just, chilling in the train. That was the first stop. Tank basically showed us what was going down with, the yards, and just, it was crazy. It was awesome.
So would you say that kind of within 96, it was just like a walk in the park?
Well, they had no fence or nothing like that. Yeah, I guess so. They still had security. You still had to watch what you were doing, obviously. But, you could just walk in there. Central had a fence, but that was the first stop. We just stopped off there just to have a little party, basically, the first night. Plus, they had bench seats on the train, so you could lie down and actually get a decent rest.
And I've heard you mention so far that 2 or 3 of the riders that you linked up with during this time were from Australia.
Yes.
What is the correlation of these riders from Australia, and how did you connect up with them?
Tank's originally from Sydney, so before his career started here, he had one in Australia from 1988, I think, was when he first got to Sydney.
Are you guys pretty much the same age?
No. I was always the baby of the crew. I was always 6 years younger, or 5 or 6 years younger than these guys.
So
yeah, they were established.
Established. They had already done all their thing in Australia.
Painting trains.
Wow.
Knew what time was, knew what to do, knew where to go, knew what to look out for, knew what paint to use.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it gave me a huge leap in front of everyone else.
So you've briefly kind of mentioned like a really good mission going down towards Wellington. What's an actual good graffiti story within Wellington?
Well, that was just the beginning of the party. Next stop was Central Yards. Did some window down panels there. Then from there we went on to Upper Hutt. Did window down panels there, end to ends. Then from there we went back to the maintenance yard just out of Wellington. Continued to party on, drinking beers, knives were on. Basically having a party down there.
Would you say that kind of when you linked up with Tank and all of DAF crew and stuff, there was quite a big emphasis on painting trains?
Yeah, Tank was already an established train rider, I guess, because he came from Sydney where they had a big system and it was just all about
trains.
All about trains, the real deal. So he was basically ingraining that into my head. You got to pay your dues.
Yeah.
That's where I picked the tag from.
Would you say that there was much of a train scene already in kind of New Zealand or Auckland?
No, there was nothing.
Nothing.
Probably a handful of riders, probably the KOAs from Sydney. They must have come over here and done something. I know they came over here in the early 90s and painted Auckland yards. I'm not quite sure about Wellington yards.
Do you think they painted like full-on pieces or kind of just bombed?
No, they've done full-on pieces. I've got photos of it.
Wow, I'd love to see what those look like. Kind of on this notion of trains and the train culture, did you feel like kind of during that period of time, people started, your crew were quite territorial of people coming into your yards, or was it kind of like, did you guys have that type of atmosphere at the time?
I think because we were based in Mount Eden, Mangawhau was where we were from, so the yard, which was in Otahuhu, was a long way to protect your territory, But yeah, we didn't like it when people went out there, of course, but hey, people got to paint too, I guess.
Yeah. Reflecting back on some of those earlier kind of moments, what is one of the best moments?
Definitely painting trains. I mean, that's the real deal, that's, I don't know, it just doesn't get any better. It's like winning an Oscar doing window down burners, you can't beat that feeling.
How often would the trains run with your name on it? Or would they get buffed straight away?
They'd pretty much get cleaned as soon as they got spotted. Maybe it would run for that rush hour or whatever, and then, no, they weren't having it.
You put a lot of effort. The reward's great because you get the flag, but then it gets buffed so quickly.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I guess it's what your buzz is at that time, Personally, there nothing beats a subway train, but like you say, it doesn't run, so what's the point in doing it sometimes? These days it's all about the photo anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Could you tell me a little bit about what the graffiti scene was like in Auckland during the 90s?
Yeah, it was a lot of straight letter tagging, basically. But people were up, man. They were, the place was trashed. I've heard that American Samoans influenced a lot of people. I'm not quite sure really how the straight letter or that kind of style evolved or came about. One person I would say that was up was Trojan. I've seen some dope blockies that he'd done on Newmarket, the motorway. He was someone who I'm surprised never went harder because he basically had that, a good kind of style even back then. But it still wasn't the real deal as far as, piecing with nice paint.
Was there actually much piecing happening, or was it predominantly tagging or predominantly bombing? Or
most of the kids were bombing or getting out. Basically took a few of the Aussie riders to come here. Well, they're Aussie Kiwis basically, like Butch and Messon and the KOA from Sydney. I remember the first pieces that I ever seen was on Stafford Ramp, which used to be on the motorway on Northcote, with Messon throw-ups and a Butch piece. And then when I seen that, I knew, there were people who could actually do proper graffiti, not just kind of tags. And
who else would you say are some real critical people, important people that came to Auckland during the 90s from overseas?
Definitely the KOAs from Sydney, and Senna, DMA, Aaron, Pawn WB was here. High Street was the place to be back then, and it was bombed, man. Like, it was just tags everywhere. And
why did everybody gravitate towards High Street?
I'm not quite sure. I think it's because of the clubs that used to be there, like Escape and Squid Bar and 48 on High Street. Everyone used to get fucked up and basically walk home and get up, and bomb.
Nice.
I think it was just so fresh and raw back then that it was quite exciting because you could tell when there was, you'd done a nice tag or it was certain style. It's hard to describe, really.
During that time, were you interested in hip-hop?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. How important do you think the hip-hop culture was to graffiti during the 90s?
I can only speak for myself back then. Obviously, because DAF and DAM, Damn Native, obviously they put out KDRU at the time, in my opinion, one of the best albums that's dropped from New Zealand. We were all basically hanging out at the Swab House. That was the house, we used to call it the Swab House. And basically they were, rhyming while we were drawing in our black books, and it just all went hand in hand, basically. It was a good time for hip-hop.
Askew always, I remember he showed me one of the early Damn Native music videos where they filmed it at combat.
Yep, I had a piece in it.
Wow, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, well there you go.
My first toy piece.
Moving on to kind of the late 90s and kind of early 2000s, where were you staying in Auckland?
I was living in Northcote at the time, but all my crew used to live in Mount Eden, Mangawhau.
Yeah.
Which was basically our stronghold. Yeah.
Is that what prompted you to kind of get up in different areas?
Yeah, I was lucky because I had a car. If you've got a car, you're everyone's best friend.
That's true. You obviously weren't confined to, painting on the West Line or Bomb Lane area.
Yeah.
What's Bomb Lane area?
That was where Kurt's Lounge was based. Kurt's Lounge and Astor Bar, which is now a block of apartments. It's quite a famous bar that was across the road from Kaiba Pass and Cheapskates. Basically, we had both walls on the Kurt's Lounge wall and the Astor Bar. They let us paint there. So that was basically quite a main road. Butch and the KOAs originally had that. I'm not quite sure how they had that wall, but afterwards my friend was running Cheapskates and it was getting all capped and stuff, so I just asked him if we can paint it, and he was, yeah.
What about Condom Alley? Were you guys quite early people to paint that?
Tank was the first one to have a proper piece on there. Yeah, I've got photos of that too.
So how did that happen?
I actually don't even know, really. I think it's funny, it was a legal wall, but no one said we could paint it.
It's one of those grey areas.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was a good spot to paint, basically, because there's a lot of foot traffic and cars, went past it.
Yeah. You had pieces out south and you had pieces out east. So the question is, how important was it getting up in different areas?
I don't think it was really that important, because realistically I was only trying to impress my peers, which was Aaron, Merkster, Tank. Other than those people or my own crew, I wasn't out there to impress anyone, if that makes sense. As
a crew for you guys, was it about, what was your guys' kind of ethos? Was it like, we need to go all city, or we need to do burners? Or...
I actually can't really remember. I think we were just painting to paint, find a cool spot and paint it. It wasn't really like, we're going to map out and paint here and do this and do that. It was more just...
And were you interested in any other cultures other than graffiti at the time? Like, were you interested in like skateboarding and all this other stuff?
Yes, skating, definitely. That's where I probably first had my love for graffiti, because I was at Aotea Square local. There's a lot of famous people who come from Aotea Square too. I used to hang out with Alroy, Smack, a lot of taggers in that too, so I guess that influenced me as well to maybe try piecing. It was an important part. I guess skateboarding and graffiti go pretty much hand in hand, just because you're rolling around, through the city.
And did you ever get into kind of like more the breakdancing and MCing and DJing and all those kind of other elements?
Not so much then, no. I mean, I would have loved to. Since J Rowe Lost Art is in our crew, he's part of Smooth Crew and Megazords, who are amazing breakers. I had the opportunity to maybe learn from them, but it wasn't really something that I was focused on. I was more focused on graffiti.
Okay. And so during this time, kind of painting graffiti in the early 90s and early 2000s, what type of paint were you using?
basically anything we could get our hands on. But my favourite paint to use was at that time touch-ups, which are automotive car paint, just amazing.
Could you run me through the different brands in order, in terms of like when you got kind of introduced to them or acquired them?
Oh, I started using VHTs before.
VHTs, yeah.
Which was, you could get them at any basically gas station or whatever. Definitely Plasticoats, because they were pretty much everywhere as well. They had an amazing range called Plasticoat Decor. I think it's Decor or Decoré.
Yeah.
Polyurethane based. Man, had some nice colours like seafoam green and mauve dust and mushroom, and they were real hard to get though. They got racked out straight away. I found out about using Tana and Tucson. It's basically the Aussie riders knew about it, so I got schooled up by them, and they were like, yeah man, go and, at that point I was buying paint, go and buy some of this shit. Basically it's shoe leather dye, but it comes in a spray can, and the smell is amazing. I would use it for aftershave if I could, but they came with a soft cap on them already, so you didn't have to get a cap. You could just.
So you could actually paint pieces with it.
Yep.
Wow.
To me, they're still some of the best paint you can get.
And where could you get that type of paint?
You could rack them from Mr. Minute, I think, is a shoe.
Yeah.
And they used to have them. It was kind of very hard to do that, but there was actually a factory down in Newton that used to used to distribute it to all those stores, so you could actually go in and buy some. They got racked out too, but
What was next?
Tana, Tucson, and Wapro. They're both basically all the same thing, just different colours, and you could use all three of them. And then Krylon came in about 96, I think, 96 or 97. Then that was a big thing, It was like, wow, Krylons, whoa. And that was the old school Krylon can with the, the ones you see in Subway art.
So you got the Krylon, and then would you say that it kind of, from that, it goes to Dymark?
It's a little bit after. It's funny you mentioned Dymark, because me and Tank were the first people to find it. I remember walking in there, and the guy was like, oh, what are you guys using this for? We're just doing some art with it, and blah, blah, blah. He had no clue. We're actually on a rack mission out in Manukau, because that's where they were based. And we went past their factory, and they had a sign outside the front, a Dymark sign. I was like, bro, Dymark, let's go and check it out. So we went in there, and I think that was the end for them. That was the beginning of the end for Dymark. Sorry, Dymark.
After Dymark, what's next?
Rust-Oleum. Yeah, Rustos came in, and man, it was on when we had Rustos. Yeah, such a beautiful paint to use.
And so, what happened after Rust-Oleum?
The first wave of paint came through, which was, I think maybe, I can't remember the name of it.
You mentioned a couple of times, that you guys used to rack some of your cans.
Yep.
What's one of the best racking stories that you guys had?
For me, I was never too much of a thief. I was always the driver, the distractor, get the person from the till, distract them, go down, drag them out away from the paint aisle while everyone else helped themselves, basically. But I did rack on occasions, I think basically after Casino had been here and showed us how the New Yorkers racked.
How did the New Yorkers rack?
With a t-shirt, a button-up t-shirt, and a big jacket or a puffy jacket. You tuck in both shirts so it creates a pocket, and with a large jacket you unzip it and
slide all the cans.
Basically you can slide 10, 12 cans around the side, and then you hold one hand in your pocket so the back kind of puffs out a bit. Voila. It was on.
What's the biggest racking mission that you guys have done in terms of like the most amount of cans?
I can't really speak about some of it, but I tell you for me, my best hustle was I sold some paintings to a drug dealer. I made 2 grams of meth, and then I swapped grams of meth for 100 tins of Montana gold. Man,
Wow.
that would have
been a luxury.
that was a good earn. Not to mention I had like, a grand cash as well from that. Yeah, didn't even have to do anything.
How important would you say racking was actually, during that period of time to the graffiti culture? Was everybody else racking?
I assume so. I mean, I can only say what we were up to, but I know, like the KOAs were out there doing stuff, and we got most of our paint through racking. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest thief, but I played my part.
What was it quite easy to rack back then?
They still had buzzers on the cans and stuff. You still had to know what you're up to. Yeah, I mean, they were watching you. I'll tell you one funny story though.
Yeah.
The boys were all dressed up like tennis players and, all in disguises and stuff. And, had the sports bag with a tennis racket sticking out of it. And, I was there distracting while, with the headband on and looking like they just come out of
the perfect disguise.
Yeah, it's all about looking the part.
What is one of your best earn stories?
I can't really speak on too much of that kind of thing, just because, obviously we all probably aren't really like that anymore, but basically my best earn is hustling my art, doing something that take a couple of hours and then selling it for a couple of grand. To me, that's the best hustle. That's the best earn. You're not hurting anyone, you're not taking anyone from anything. You're just using your skills to flip stuff. Yeah.
So moving on to our next set of questions, which is more about your kind of influences, your style and kind of inspiration. How would you describe your style?
My style is a mash-up between Tank, Aaron B, Merkster, Prinzer from Australia, Roski from Australia, Payne from Australia. They were basically all my influence, and basically I just mashed it all together, and that's what mine came out like, I guess.
You've kind of got quite a lot of work which is what I would consider as wild style. Would you agree that it's wild style?
Yes.
Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, semi-wild.
And so what's your kind of working process behind that? Are you always sketching and then you bring the sketch to the wall, or are you normally freestyling?
To begin with, it was always, taking the sketch to the wall, but as you get your flow together and what's up, you don't really need one. It was just off the top of the head, which I got that from Aaron. He's always just straight off the top of the head, basically.
Kind of during the early 90s and 2000, was sketching an important part to your process, or did most of the experience come from painting the wall?
No, drawing is very important. I think it's important for every graffiti writer to draw. Maybe not what you're going to do that night, but just to have your ideas and things that you want to try, you can try out on paper first. And then basically, the more you draw, the better you get. That's what I think, personally.
What kind of caps were you using back in the day?
Back in the day, we were using Tucson caps, which came with the Tucson antenna. Roski, when he first came over here, he bought, I think it was 1,000 New York fat caps with him.
Wow.
Or maybe it was 500 New York fat caps and 500 Rustos. Basically, he hooked us up.
Did shifting to New York's change everything?
Oh, yeah. To me, they're one of the best fat caps.
So yeah, how did using New York's kind of influence your graffiti?
Basically, you could get all those dope kind of whole, I don't know how to describe it, like the softball look, especially with tags and stuff like that.
Yeah, the kind of tubey.
Yeah, didn't use them so much for outlining, just for filling in, doing tags
and what were you using? What caps were you using to outline pieces back then?
Just the normal Tucson standard soft caps. Okay. I'm not really sure what they're called these days, but yeah, they were like gold. We used to. It's not like now where you just use one and throw it away. We were getting thinners, and just because they were so rare, you couldn't just go and order them online, or I had caps that would last me for 5 years.
Wow. Other than graffiti, do you get inspiration from anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I love art. You know, I've always been into art, drawing, comics. Vaughan Bode, big inspiration, you know. If you look at all the graffiti to begin with, it's all basically Vaughan Bode styled, even the colours and, you know, just the Dali, all the classics, you know, Picasso. I'm really loving those Greens stuff. He's amazing. It was actually a privilege to meet him when he came over here in, I think, 2007 or 2008. He had a sick piece that was in Conch Records. Yeah, I'm not quite sure who organised that. Oh, he had an exhibition down at Gal Langsford, maybe? One of those big galleries. But he also had a party on one night, and he was live painting, and there was a raffle, and whoever won the raffle got to keep one of his works, which was Hone, I'm pretty sure, from Damn Native. H1's got it. Quote me if I'm wrong, I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure he's got it.
Did you look overseas for influence in terms of like style, other than the people that you've kind of mentioned that came over?
Well, to me, New York that's where it is, man. New York, we're only trying to imitate what they've already done, basically. You know, Scheme, Scene, all those sick writers who I still think are the best writers, you know, period.
Did you manage to have much exposure to graph mags and things like that?
We got one issue of Can Control back in 1995, I think. It was a freight issue. I remember, you know, just going, whoa. I think it was a LA magazine.
LA one.
We only had one issue though that came here because it got stolen, obviously.
How did it get here? Who brought it in?
I think it was Magazino, one of those stores that used to be downtown. Brought in some graffiti related stuff sometimes, but I think they stopped that after. Obviously too, we used to get Source magazine, which always had one page with graffiti in it, so we had that. Also Stress magazine, which was it Kit from New York used to put out. That shit just got racked up straight away too.
So this is all those magazines are late 90s?
Early 90s. Yeah.
Early 90s.
I'd say I think those Stress magazines were 1997 maybe when they came out. 97, 98.
For me, I would say kind of mid 2000s, like 2005 kind of onwards. The internet started becoming a little bit bigger. Did that influence your graffiti at all? Like, did you?
No, because I think by that time, like our peak years as a crew were from 1994, 1995 to 2001. That was our peak years. I mean, we were, you know, just young and going crazy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of shit happened when methamphetamine came to New Zealand about 2000, and then a lot of focuses changed from, you know, going out doing graffiti to obviously doing dumb stuff, basically. When methamphetamine hit the scene, it was, you know, everyone just wanted to get high. It wasn't like, let's get high and go painting. It was, let's get high. And, it was actually a pretty bad time, I think, you know, personally, because just the crime increased too. Yeah. Because, you know.
So who would you say, you've given me a kind of good list of people that have influenced you. Who would you say are your defining top 3 people?
I'd have to mention who I mentioned. I can't really. I mean, I tried to stick to a certain style, like our crew, having a crew style, which is to me was important. And also, like everyone bites, but it's good to bite from people you know, who are your friends, who are established already. I think it's a good way of going forward as a writer. You know, it's important too.
How important is Tank?
I can't even describe it. Yeah, when he came, it was just things just changed. Things happened, you know. He was always real thirsty for graffiti, basically. And like I said, because I had a car, I was there.
Take me back to that moment. What does a thirsty Tank, what does that mean?
That means let's rack some paint, let's go to the yard, let's do some panels, let's drink all night after that, and take drugs and go and get the photos and repeat. I'm glad I lived it like that for a while. I mean, I don't live like that now. It was an important part. I guess because you're young too. You know, I'm in my early 40s, so things have changed a lot for me personally.
And can you tell me a little bit about how important R&B was to you?
R&B was When I seen his piece, they call it Balm Lane. I call it where Kurt's Lounge was, because that was the club we all used to go to. Yeah, when I seen that Kurt's Lounge wall, the piece that he'd done there with the mushrooms, I just lost my mind, basically. To me, it's still one of the best pieces to ever been done in New Zealand.
Wow, okay. What's an interesting story or experience that you had with R&B?
We used to go out to Riverhead Forest and pick mushrooms, do that kind of stuff. That's a lot of DAF is just mushroom funk, basically.
Wow.
The fun guys.
How many people were in DAF crew?
There's a lot of people in DAF crew that aren't writers also, which were just, just friends and hanging out. But the main writers are Mock, Lost Art, who's from Smooth Crew as well, Megazoids, myself, Tank, Merc, A to B, Bliss, Sewer Rat. I guess, basically everyone that wasn't damn native at the time were basically DAF, because it was kind of a mixed thing,
And so how important was it for you guys to paint productions as a crew?
We tried to as much as we could, but obviously all the paint wasn't there at that time. We were using, Tana and Tucson, and that was kind of... we did productions, but as far as like a production today with, like the big productions with multiple characters and stuff, I don't think we actually really touched on doing that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
We could have done more, put it that way. I'm really missing Merc because of his characters were so dope,
How many of the people in your crew now would you say are still active? Yeah.
Everyone would still be drawing and, but as far as actually going out, painting trains and, doing productions and stuff, probably none of us really.
Another thing that I'm kind of interested in knowing about is how many of the people in your crew, after stopping graffiti or doing less graffiti, have carried on to pursue, say, an art career?
I'm not really sure what Merkster's up to. I know he's in Canada. I don't really know what he's doing, so I couldn't really tell you. But we can all paint. We're all artists. But as far as maybe pushing the boundaries and breaking into being a famous artist, I don't think any of us have really. Not that we couldn't, but I think it was not really the focus of doing that. Yeah, I guess it's a funny thing to break into, You have to have the right connections, you have to be able to sell yourself too, which is, I think, a lot of our crew find it hard, because you've got one part of you wants to be the unknown writer doing panels, and you don't want to have your name, your face everywhere, I should say. And then when you're an artist, that's what you need to be doing. You need to be out there mingling, mixing, selling yourself. It's like a double-edged sword. Yeah.
Kind of wrapping up this last set of questions, what is some important advice that you've been given?
Don't know about advice, but you got to pay your dues some way. Just get up, do your thing, try and do your own thing. I know it's very hard. You can only replicate doing graffiti so much, but basically that's about it, really.
So this last set of questions is really based on your opinion, and it's a bit more general. So how long have you been painting now? Since 1989. So where does that put you?
Well, I would say I've been painting since late 94.
Okay.
I haven't really, painting like a proper piece. I dabbled with it in the 89 to 94, but actually doing a proper piece with good paint, 94 basically was when I started. That's when I say that I started writing.
What keeps you interested in graffiti after all these years?
I'm not really sure what to tell you the truth. I don't know. It's something that's just so dope and just so...
It's raw.
It's raw, yeah.
It's raw, it's real.
Yeah.
That's what I feel about it.
Yeah. And it's not like, you're an MC and you're just up on the stage showboating. It's like you are showboating, but you're not adding your face to it, if that makes a sense.
Well, you're anonymous.
Yeah.
And do you think that, having painted for so long, do you think you'll ever actually stop painting graffiti?
I doubt it. I mean, I'd love to continue. I need to continue because it's something that, you know, I still love to this day. And I think where I kind of fell off was I kind of stopped a little bit but never continued drawing, you know. And so my style kind of, even though it's kind of a good thing, it's stagnated to that kind of time of when I stopped. So I guess my pieces still kind of look like they are from the 90s. I don't know if it's a good thing, but I kind of can't paint any other way. I try to, but you know, it just doesn't.
You stopped. Why did you stop?
Basically, my peers stopped, I think, and then it was kind of like, well, who am I going to impress now? You know, some 20-year-old kid. I was like, I don't know. It kind of seems lame, but personally, you know, I used to do pieces and like A to B would be like, fuck man, I seen this, sick man. You know, to kind of give you that fire to just, yeah, I'm gonna go out and do another one. And I guess when they stopped, it was like, well, I don't know, now what do I do now? Who am I to impress now? Or, you know, I wouldn't say I stopped. Like I was always, you know, I'd drop a piece a year or, you know, do 2 a year. But I mean, compared to other people that were, you know, going hard, that's pretty much stopping, really.
How do you actually find the balance between, you know, family, travel, work, and then finding a place for graffiti?
For me at the moment, it's hard, you know, like because I've done a couple of pieces this year now, or 2 this year now. It's just like,
be careful, man. Couple more, you'll be.
I know. It's just, you know, it's especially the paint the way it is these days. It's just so nice to use, and all the colours just pop. But yeah, you know, I never really stopped. Just,
is there a large, you know, thing that you're trying to achieve with your graffiti?
Obviously going to New York and doing the real deal.
Have you been to New York?
No.
So is it on the cards?
Someday. I'm building a house at the moment, so I might have to wait a few years.
Yeah. Have you ever suffered any, you know, health problems from spray painting? You know, given that you've painted for, you know, over 20 years, is there anything that comes out of that?
No, touch wood, I'm pretty healthy, but you never know, you know.
If there was an up-and-comer that kind of just started graph, or, you know, still kind of young, or been, you know, in the process of paying his dues, would you be open to painting with them? Like, is that...
Definitely. I paint with anyone these days. Yeah. When I first started, and I was very crew orientated, it's like, no, you don't paint with them.
Why was it like that?
I'm not really quite sure. It was just the attitude that everyone had, you know. I think it kind of held us back a little bit, just because, you know, obviously you mingle with people, other opportunities happen. Yeah. Not so much in graph, but, you know, businesses or, you know, painting in this gallery, it just opens the doors for you. But, you know, these days I'll paint with anyone, man. What
are some general graffiti principles that you follow?
Just try and do your own thing, I guess. You know, back in the days, it was, like I said, I wasn't really much of a racker, but, you know, you definitely, buying your paint was not really the thing to be doing. You had to either be doing earns or go and rack that, or, you know, doing something to get it for free. But this day and age, you know, it's so cheap, it's kind of ridiculous to actually go and try and steal it. You know, I guess just try and be yourself too. It's all right to bite. Just realise that you're biting and try and change up.
So to you, what do you class as a real writer?
A real writer is, you know, someone out there basically painting trains, stealing your paint, just, you know, being a little shit, basically, running amok. But I mean, you can't keep doing that for the rest of your life, because it's just not going to be happening. Some people can.
Can a person that, say, doesn't rack and doesn't paint trains, is that a real writer?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're doing something, it really depends on what your viewers on graffiti, you know.
When I see online, you know, like somebody paints something and that's not real.
Yeah.
Because it's not on steel.
Yeah.
Do you hold the same kind of view?
Maybe back in the day. Now I'm just happy to be painting anything, being creative.
kind of looking more kind of loosely around Auckland graffiti, what do you think about the scene now?
I think it's dope. There's some people doing amazing stuff, young kids going hard, painting steel all around the world. I'm actually very pleased about how the New Zealand graffiti scene has evolved. It's amazing. Props to all you writers out there.
Have you travelled to many other cities around New Zealand?
Just basically from Auckland to Wellington. We used to always tiki tour, stop off.
Yeah.
Rack up on the way down, and yeah, basically that was it.
Is there anybody, any writers from Auckland that have your attention?
Yeah, I mean, basically all the crews that are out there at the moment, TMD, G-Back, MTS, even the newer generation, I think the OTR. There's a whole lot of other crews I don't really know, but I see them up on the motorways and doing signs, and it's good. I love it.
How do you think we can continue to grow the scene here in New Zealand?
That's a good question. It's a hard question to answer. I guess just keep doing stuff like what you're doing, to get the kids who are interested and show them the way it should be done, basically. But yeah, when 2010 hit, man, it was
crazy,
pretty
right?
sad.
It was very sad.
Yeah.
And so I guess part of what I've been doing, a lot of the stuff that I do is a lot of the content kind of ends up going online. So what do you think are the pros and cons of things like social media?
I think it's good because obviously this day and age, it's all about the photo, and you post it and then everyone around the world can see what you're doing, basically. But cons are, I guess, people take too much influence from other people where they can, automatically see it on their phone. They don't have to go down the lines and walk around or, do all the cool adventurous stuff that is to do with being a writer. They may not have that under their belt, which is, I think it's important,
What is this adventurous stuff that you're referring to?
Just like walking the lines.
Why do people need to walk the lines?
I don't know.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, no, you're right. Now it's pointless, which is sad. I don't know about Auckland is like that. I don't really know about Wellington or Christchurch and the other cities. I think they have more of a active track side piecing culture. Like you go to Wellington, man, you do a piece down there, it gets left for years. Big up to FKBs, they're up too, man.
Do you think that writers should share their flicks online?
Yeah, how else is anyone going to see it, I guess? This day and age, I think it's important, but then it's hard. It's like a double-edged sword,
Why do you share your flicks?
For me personally, it's just a place to archive stuff. Obviously also where people can look at it, but it's also a good tool to share your art, I guess, or to let people know what you've been up to or doing. I guess in Auckland, like you say, there's no wall, so how else is anyone going to see it these days?
Once again, being future focused, what direction do you think graffiti is going to take in the next 10 years? Where do you see it going?
I think it's kind of just staying at the same place, really, concentrating on proper pieces and productions, trains, basically.
What do you want to see more of in Auckland? What type of graffiti?
For me, New York is where it's at for me, that kind of style. But I like what you guys are doing, being very creative and trying out new techniques and new ways of doing things, and like not having a definitive outline on everything and having flares and, using fat caps for outlines and
using 100 colours.
Yeah. I mean, it's all experimentation, Not every piece you're going to do is going to be good.
What is the key qualities a successful writer has?
Dedication. Got to give a shout out to Addict because he's a machine. He's a real writer, if you ask me.
And what are some key kind of qualities that you see in a person like that?
Just his thirst for trains and just, racking paint and just still being being true to what a New York rider should be, basically.
What would be 3 pieces of advice that you would give to some up-and-coming riders listening to this right now?
Do a couple of pieces, try and not bite too much, but I mean, it's inevitable really, you're going to have to try and do something, but just go hard, Definitely try and get out on the lines to see what that feels like. Maybe steal a can or 2.
Steal a marker?
Steal a marker.
Start with a pencil.
Yep.
And so, last question, what would you do differently if you started graffiti all over again?
I would probably try and stay away from drugs.
Stay focused on the graph.
Yeah.
Love it. Cool. So to wrap up the real-time web series episode, we're going to do a little 10 for 10 rapid fire question session. So quality or quantity?
Quality.
Style or technique?
Style.
Color or chrome?
Color.
Bombing or panels?
Panels.
Best spray paint?
Push forward touch-ups.
Most cans you've racked at once?
10.
Best city for graffiti?
Auckland.
Scariest place you've painted?
In the old train tunnel that runs from Newmarket to Parnell when a train's coming.
And any shout outs you'd like to make?
Yeah, shout out to my crew, DAF. Just anyone out there in New Zealand that's doing, being creative, doing your thing. Big shout outs to you. Big shout out to Burst One.
Sure, brother. Thank you so much, bro, for spending your time here. We really appreciate your perspective, knowledge, and insight around your practice and thoughts around the graffiti culture. Obviously, with 20 plus years of knowledge, I'm really stoked that you've been able to share some of those thoughts with us. You've obviously provided an incredible resource for all the riders and hopefully inspiration for the riders here in New Zealand and overseas. I hope that this video, more generally, has been insightful for everybody and most importantly educative and for the people that have watched and listened. If you would like to see more videos like this in the future, make sure you subscribe to my channel and watch some of the early episodes, because this is episode 13, so we've got essentially 12 plus hours of other footage that you can watch and listen to, and feel free to drop us a like, share and comment below and let us know who you'd like to see next or any questions you'd like us to ask in the next episode, and how we can improve the series for you. So also let us know who you'd like to see next in future episodes, and stay tuned for more of the real-time web series.